Hi everyone, welcome. Today we're going to give a quick feedback for the midterm. Probably not that quick, but a general feedback on the midterm. I would love to give you each individual sort of comments and notes. It's very difficult with the size of classes that I'm teaching to do that, but what I'm quite confident I will be able to do is all of those of you who are interested in that, who would like more detailed feedback on their essay individually, you're more than welcome to contact me. We could set up a time through Zoom, or I could just we could exchange emails, whichever you prefer. Okay, so first of all, to note that again, as I've announced, there will be a makeup for the midterm. The makeup for the midterm will be graded the same. It will look very similar. The questions will be different, but it will be the same format, and it'll cover the same material. I understand that the exam took place at a pivotal moment in our semester where we switched from being a face-to-face class to being an online class. Lots of you were going through coronavirus-related issues, and certainly the universities asked me to be very flexible on those issues. So that will happen. The makeup will happen. That said, as I said, it'll be graded the same. So the reason I say that is lots of you didn't do very well on the essay portion in particular. That's really the feedback that I'm giving you is on the essay. So lots of you didn't do very well. Some of you did. Obviously, if you got 14 or 15 points, you've done very well. Very small number of people got full points for this, for the essay portion. Those that did had a lot of detail. By far, I think the most popular question was the question about China and the United States. And I think in some ways, there was it sort of betrays a level of comfort with the issue that may have led you astray in some ways. I've no doubt that you that you've been following the news, that you understand sort of the general situation in the world between China and the United States. What I was particularly looking at here in this essay question, right, was what do realists have to say? We could almost cut it off there, right? What do realists have to say? But I wanted to give you something specific to talk about, right? What do realists have to say about the relationship between China and the United States? What I was really asking you to do is to apply realist principles, which if you got 15 points, oftentimes, you did. You talked about E.H. Carr, you talked about Morgenthau, the very best ones did. Lots of quite good ones, or maybe even very good ones, talked much more about Mearsheimer, which made sense in the context of China and the United States, and so they were quite good as well. One thing I'll note with Mearsheimer is that the Mearsheimer piece, it's a bit shorter than the E.H. Carr and the Morgenthau pieces, but one of the notable things about it, so it certainly talks about hegemony, and lots of you included that, which was good. If you give me some details about the hegemony, you talked about regional hegemony, and you talked about how the United States has achieved regional hegemony and how it wants to prevent anybody else achieving regional hegemony. But the thing that maybe fewer of you latched onto with Mearsheimer is that Mearsheimer himself, in that piece, sort of restates the tenets of realism. I think he gives us three of the tenets of realism in there when he's describing his political theory. And so I definitely, the best ones definitely gave me that sort of realist portion of the question in some detail. The less good ones, and so if you found yourself scoring less than 12, I would say, probably less than 11, certainly there was lots of cases that were less than 10. But if you found yourself in that category, certainly the less than 10 category, I felt like there was very little solid, specific detail of realism in that question. And I felt like, maybe there was some quite good discussion. There was one or two in particular that I remember that had some quite good discussion of the relationships between the United States and China. But in our class is about international relations theory. Right? Certainly the first half of it is, which is what the midterm's covering. And so really I want to know about realism in there. And I want to see a lot about realism in there. And so where I didn't, you were likely to have scored certainly less than 12, most likely less than 10. And so bear that in mind if you scored less than 10, and if you want to have another go at this midterm in the makeup period, there won't be the exact same question again. So, but no doubt there'll be a question that will ask you to talk about realism, right? Talk about some of the tenets and the principles of realism. Maybe you'll have to apply it in a different way. But certainly, I want you to leave the class knowing something about realism and writing something about realism. So, some of those, you'd have got sort of more, maybe closer to the 10, or maybe even closer to 12. If you talk about power, maybe, and self-help and survival, those are sort of, for me, the very entry-level realist principles. But even they were lacking in a lot of cases. So that's some sort of advice. If you're interested in realism, if you think, yeah, I'll probably write about realism again, then definitely you need to do some reading and sort of take some notes. I'll give it to you, right? This is kind of a hard thing that I'm asking you to do here, right? Because I've got the closed book, right? There's no notes in here, so I'm asking you to retain something here, right? I'm asking you to have something to retain the principles of realism, and certainly I'm not expecting you to reproduce, right, word for word, Morgenthau, right? But I am asking you to refer to that, right? I mean, it's in the question there, right? So you should be able to refer quite specifically to at least some of what Morgenthau, we talked about Mearsheimer, Walt, E.H. Carr, and certainly some of you did and got very high scores because of it. And I'd say, and this is again general feedback, but I'd say, generally, those who included specific details from the reading, even if sometimes they weren't referenced referenced particularly directly, as long as I could see that these are specific concepts that we've talked about in class. And you don't have to have talked about them in class, although we did talk about many of the important ones in class. If they're in the book, if they're in the reading, then that enhances your score. And I'd say that was maybe my biggest focus as I was grading. I don't think I fully anticipated that would be my biggest focus, because I think my focus was going to be on how closely you answer the question and how you marshal these details from the readings and from class discussions into answering the question. But because there was relatively few of you that really did marshal many details at all, it did become sort of a dichotomy between those who marshaled the details in any sort of a way, right? And those where I didn't really see any evidence, any impact at all from the course. So I'm going to ask you again, please do read. I think in the second half of the class, while we're apart, right, while we're not in the same room, we're not having the discussions, certainly my videos have been focused on details from the reading, and I think they would be, well, I expected they would be helpful for taking the final exam, right, the videos that I'm currently making and producing. So I definitely ask you to make use of those. I think they'll be very, very useful to you in the final, at least as a starting point, giving you some of these details, some of these specifics that really I want you to take away from the course, and I'd like to see in the final exam. There aren't those videos, right, for the retake of the midterm. There really aren't those videos that help. It would, I think it would have been helpful for you to have come to class and to discuss some of those details. But certainly they're in the reading, right? They're certainly in the reading. And so if you are going to take the midterm again, I definitely advise some close reading, some notes, and even some memorization, right, of some specifics. The readings are fairly short, and certainly if you're going back over the reading, there's nothing, there's no better way for me to spend my time as a teacher, as an instructor, than to have you have done some reading, have understood part but not other part, and for you to come to me and say, here's what I'm getting from it. What am I missing? That's absolutely in my sort of things that I think I should be doing, and something that I would enjoy doing. And so feel free to approach me in that way, with those sorts of approaches. Hey, I've read this. I didn't quite get this. Could we talk about it? Would you explain it? And whether we do that via email, sort of email backwards and forwards, that's totally fine. Probably it'll be easier to do it sort of maybe across a Zoom meeting or something. But whatever you have time for and whatever you're interested in, I'm easy to be flexible with that. So there's some feedback, and I think it does focus on the details, and it focuses on, like, let's bring in something from the reading. Yes, we can all give a fairly informed discussion about Chinese-US relations, just from what we've heard of in the news and things like that. But really, for the class, what I want you to do is to bring in, as it says in the questions, what do realists have to say? I've talked a lot about that question, and that was absolutely the most popular question by far. And it was when I taught it online as well. I had a similar question for my online class that was also China, the United States. People would like to talk about that, and that's totally fine. Some of the other ones, I think maybe the second most popular that I came across was the feminist scholarship. And again, what is the point of feminist scholarship in international relations? What do feminists hope to achieve? And again, there was one or two ones here that went into sort of some detail about sort of feminism as a general movement, sort of women's liberation movement, perhaps. One quite good one about that, which scored quite low because, again, it's feminist scholarship in international relations. That's what we're looking at. And so, and I think, it says in the general description, give as much detail as you can and write as much as you can. You should draw on specific concepts from relevant assigned readings, right? This is not really the place where we would, this is not the class where we would discuss and study sort of the women's liberation movement from the sort of 1970s United States. It might have some relevance for international relations scholarship in terms of feminist scholarship. It might have some relevance to that, but it's not what we looked at, right? And it's not. It's certainly not sort of the level of detail and the focus that we're looking for. Right? I want you to bring it. I want you to talk about Antigone. Right? Both of the feminist readings that we did, they were both about Antigone, and I think I made a video about that one, or maybe that was for my online class. But yeah, we definitely. I want to hear about Antigone, and some of them were quite good. Some of those I noticed a few. Again, there weren't as many as the Chinese one, but I bet proportion-wise, those ones were oftentimes better than the China United States one. Certainly, Antigone's experience with their students, the students, they find it, mostly female students, they find this masculine dominated, sort of talks about masculine and feminine traits. And then certainly though, what's the goal? And I definitely talked about that in a video, I think, but, or in class, it was one of the questions that we got. But also it's very well discussed, because I think that the two Antigone pieces that are in there are quite sort of, they're not examples of feminist scholarship, right? They're not examples of feminist IR scholarship. They're talking about feminist IR scholarship. And so Antigone, one of them sort of charting the course of Antigone in her work, which of course is central and vital and seminal, which is completely the wrong word probably to use when talking about feminists. But it's the beginnings, right? It's the beginnings of feminist IR. And so that was absolutely relevant. Any details from that about her life and about how she came to feminism and what she started with, how she looked outside of the field of international relations, right? She looked to the hard sciences and saw how they didn't seem as welcoming to women, and she sort of used that and published the first book in international relations feminist scholarship. So absolutely, that one was relevant. Those sorts of details would have really helped that. Would have helped that. that essay as a beginning, if nothing else. Okay, like I said, actually, proportionally, those were a little bit better. There were fewer about social structures. There were fewer about that. That is complicated, and I think there's a lot to say about that. I think you can go backwards and forwards on that quite a bit, especially on the can they be altered. We did in class. That was something that we got really bogged down in some detail there in class, as I remember. But certainly there was a lot to write about that. But and that brings me, I suppose, to my sort of final thing. So first of all, the big takeaway from this should be focus on detail. Well done if you did. Focus on the detail as there are in the readings, and as there will be for the final on videos, because I'm basically taking from the reading for my videos. That should be the biggest takeaway. What can I take? What can I have about realism? What can I have about liberalism? What can I have ready to go into an essay? Same for constructivism. Same for a few people went on the. I thought. Is it in here actually, or was that in my online class? No, yeah. I did a variation of this on my online class, but it wasn't quite this one. But this one, choose either realism, liberalism, or constructivism. To what extent would your chosen approach agree or differ with Huntington's class of civilizations? I put that in there. I thought if somebody's really excited about Huntington, Clash of Civilizations, and a few people did answer that, but that really, for me, that would be the hardest question to answer. I would probably, talk all about. I could pretty easily sort of give you the important points personally about Huntington's Clash of Civilization thesis, but then when I go to compare it, it doesn't make itself readily available. I don't think for comparison, because it's in some ways I can kind of see elements of each. A few people went with realism on that. That might be even the hardest one, I think, to go with. For me, at least, anyway. Well, I mean, realism is nice because it's perhaps maybe it's the simplest, most stark philosophy, right, for international relations, and it's the origins of international relations. It's the beginnings, and so it's. But there's some real differences there with Clash of Civilizations. At least the way I'm thinking about it in terms of state survival, right? State survival doesn't seem to be central, right, to Huntington's Clash of Civilizations. We've got states sort of melding themselves into civilizations almost. Although he does say, look, states are still important. They're still important actors. So anyway, that's probably how I would start to do that paper. Anyway, not a lot of people with Wallerstein. I didn't see a lot of. I saw one or two people mention Wallerstein in other, which I thought was interesting. And here's what I would say. At this point, certainly, I don't think you can expect full points from this. But if you really don't see any other way of doing this, no, I'm going to say try and shoehorn it in. Well, yeah, it's a good tactic to always do. The stuff that you do have, the details that you do have, and I saw quite a few people doing this, and it's probably a good tactic, even though it probably does detract. You're probably not getting the full 15 points when you're doing this, but they're sort of shoehorning any information that they have in there, right? It's better than talking in generalities, right, and not having anything at all from the readings. I want to see what you've taken away from this. I want to see what you've taken away. Okay, so the good news again is that you've had a dry run at this now. If you want to do it again, of course, it's going to be at the end of the semester. You're also going to have a final, so it's not going to be ideal circumstances probably to be taking two of these exams sort of very close together. It's going to be a big demanding on your time. You probably have other classes with other demands, right? Other exams and that sort of thing. But that's it's at least you've had a go before, and you've and again it's optional. If you want to keep this score, we'll keep this score. Doing it. I was going to say doing it won't harm your score, but it will harm your score if you score less in the makeup than you do in in the original one. So bear that in mind. That's the only real sort of downside of taking, again, that and the time commitment and the fact that you're probably busy at the end of the semester. All right, I'm going to end there because I'm sort of rambling on now about the makeup, which I already announced before, but hopefully this information will be useful to you in the rest of the course. Again, I think the videos are going to be useful for the final. They're not going to be useful really for the makeup because there are none that cover that material. And so, except I think maybe for feminism there is. But so do check that and have a look if it at least will get you started with the details. And so you'll see me talking about some of the details, and that might well, that's a basis, isn't it? And then it might send you back to the reading to look for a little bit more. All right, that's the end of that then. I'm going to post this up, and this is my feedback for your midterm exams.